I was the worst performing manager at Hindustan Lever for like over a year. I can't let today's target determine how I feel about myself and my self-esteem. So sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Let me just do it the way that I would do if I was the CEO. And I just started making decisions, and that area turned around, became from the worst performing area, became the best performing area.
Wow. Passion is great. Passion is very, very important, but so is action.
Star Wars is really meaningful. You need to go inwards and kind of get rid of all these kind of insecurities and doubts. So it's like self-mastery will lead to great powers. And the fastest way to become a leader and good at decision making is just making more of them. I don't think enough people use coaches. Investment leads to like 2 promotions early, which is another 20, 30 lakhs, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Push yourself proactively rather than waiting for the company for sending me something. The boss saying, have you done this, have you done this, have you done this? So at a certain level, it's going to change.
Why do people shy away from doing personal branding? Is because somewhere they feel, am I good enough?
It's a very different culture in startup.
Have you seen manifestation magic happen to one of your students or someone you've coached?
Well, she's sitting in front of me. I remember in one of my...
जिंदगी में बहुत सारे लोगों को अच्छे मेंटर्स नहीं मिलते, अच्छे कोच नहीं मिलते, अच्छे बॉसेस नहीं मिलते, और नतीजा यू गेट लॉस्ट, यू बिकम सिनिकल. आप सब कुछ एक्सटर्नलाइज करने लगते हैं. This episode is for you. In this episode, we are talking to Mr. Kanishka Sinha, who is a leadership executive coach. उन्होंने बहुत सारे mid to senior level leaders को train और mentor किया है. बहुत सारी बातें करी हैं आज हमने, from taking decisions to being bold to finding your purpose. अगर आप इस सब को सुनना चाहते हैं, so let's get inspired by his stories, and as we do that, let's turn the page. Welcome, Kanishk.
Thank you so much, Gundhi.
Kanishk, turn the page.
Yeah.
This podcast is all about inspiration. It's all about motivation. And you know that how much you have changed my life. And it's a complete honor to have you and doing this interview with you for our audience. So thank you.
Wow, it's a pleasure to be here.
So let's get straight into the questions. I want to know about your journey and how did you get into coaching?
Yeah, actually, I was the worst performing manager at Hindustan Lever for like over a year. So that's one of my proud things on my resume. I took over an area that was kind of like struggling a little bit. And there was a point where I was really doubting myself. And I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing wrong. And I went to a leadership program as a participant, very similar to the ones that you and Tapan attended. And I remember the trainer, I was just saying, I just don't know why I'm failing so badly. And she was like, yes, you do. And I was like, do I know? And I was like, and then I think I came out and saying, why am I failing so badly? It's because every time I don't achieve my targets, I start doubting myself. Like, am I good enough? Am I capable enough, etc. And I think one of the things that I took out from that is that I'm not my result. So I'm sitting on my chair, but I'm not my chair. If I say I am my chair, then I've lost my mind. So same way, just because I succeed doesn't mean I'm a success. Just because I fail doesn't mean I am a failure. I can't let today's target determine how I feel about myself and my self-esteem. So sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but that's the result and this is me. And so when I made that separation, and I said, listen, I might get sacked anyway. I don't know. I'm doing so badly. So let me just do it the way that I would want to do it, rather than, my boss is going to say, haven't you done this? Why did you do that? You're going to, let me just do it the way that I would do if I was the CEO. And I just started making decisions, and that area turned around, became from the worst performing area, became the best performing area, etc. And I think that's what I took from it. And I said, I got so much from that, not just professionally, but personally as well. I wasn't spending time with my parents, or my wife, or anything like that. And I was like, okay, how do I really want to live life? I could spend all my time saying, oh, am I a failure? I haven't done this quarter's number, etc. What will people think? Or I can say, what are the things that are really important? And because I got so much value, when it was time for me to go from sales into marketing, I said, actually, you know what? I think I want to be doing that. So I called up the company that had done the program. It was a Singapore-based company. And I said, listen, you're not based in India. I don't have a psychology or coaching background, but how about I help you set up base in India? I'll do the client relationship development, I'll do the hotel booking, the flight bookings, the printouts, etc. And I'll sit at the back and watch you guys train, and you'll have somebody who can kind of build a business in India. And they said, yeah, it's a growing dynamic market. We would love to come in. So that's how I got into the training world, initially as a business development guy. And the trainers would come in from Singapore and train. And I said, listen, you're spending so much money on these international trainers. Wouldn't it make sense for me to do some follow-up calls just to make sure that they implement? And they said, okay, yeah, we could do like 10 minutes of call. So I charged myself at a very low rate just to initially do some follow-ups. Are you implementing it, etc.? And those became coaching conversations. Effectively, it became longer and longer.
Yeah.
And then I said, listen, the trainers, I can't do it as well as them, but there's training senior level people. I could replicate something like that for the junior guys. You had a
Yeah.
much more cost affordable thing. So that's how I got into the training and coaching. And then, eventually when the financial crisis happened, they decided not to come to India. And I said, actually, let's start our own company.
Wow.
And so that's where Girish, myself, and Avantika, we started Stillwater. And it's been not a single day of work because it's just been so much fun.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm playing every day. And the program that you attended,
Yes.
I just decided to do that for free on the weekends.
Wow.
Because I was like, I enjoy it so much. I could go out for a movie for 3 hours, or I could do the work that I do for 3 hours, and I would actually do the thing that I do for a living anyway for free.
Yeah.
And that's how much I enjoy it. So it's just,
Yeah.
that's how I got into the space, basically.
Super. I think the one line which has really stuck with me is that if you fail, you're not a failure.
Right.
Yeah, separating the two is very, very important for us. So, Kanishk, you mentor so many mid-senior to senior level leaders.
Yeah.
If I have to ask you, what is that one common thing which makes a leader great? What would you say?
I think they know what's important to them, and because they know this is more important than that, then they make the choices consistent with what they want to create under pressure. They still make those choices consistent with that. So in order for them to be clear on what is important, they need to do some introspection. They really need to think. So if you introspect, you get clarity. Clarity gives you conviction. Conviction gives you, commitment. Commitment produces the results. And then a track record of results gives you the confidence that I can handle anything that's thrown at me. But it really starts with introspection. So I think that's what sometimes when we're chasing the daily routine of stuff, we can follow orders, we can execute, we can do what's expected of us. And we're so worried that, we're meeting other people's expectations. That is what's driving us, but we need to step out of that and think, what is really important? What am I passionate about? What do I believe? And then when things become tough, I'll still keep on going forward because I really believe in that.
Yeah.
If I'm doing it because I think I should, when the pressure comes, I might kind of like go where there's less pressure. So I think it's about knowing what's really important to you.
So I think this is a very interesting framework which you have given. So there is clarity, which brings in conviction,
Right.
which brings in commitment,
Right.
which brings in confidence.
Right.
But my question is, how do leaders get that clarity?
Introspection. They've got to think. They've got to step back. They've got to pay attention to what they're feeling, what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy. I think you've got to be willing to suffer a bit more rather than mute the pain. Because if you mute the pain, you don't experience, this is what I don't like, this is what I do like. And so I think leaders have at some point experienced that pain which says, no, not this. And if I say, no, let me kind of like get through the pain, let me suppress it, not pay attention, let me distract myself from the pain, let me not experience it, then I'll keep doing what I'm doing and kind of live in this low level pain throughout. But if I allow myself to really feel it and say that's not what I want, then I can really do something different. So I think allowing myself to feel what I feel is what leads to the introspection, and that creates clarity.
Got it. So you're saying the first step is to really sit down and not just go with the flow, go with the hustle. You may not be enjoying it,
Right.
but just go take a step back and
Right.
figure out what you really like and what you don't.
Right.
Yeah, perfect. There's a fundamental debate, leaders are born versus leaders are built. What's your take on that?
Well, it's not a factual statement. It's not like, what is the capital of Peru? It's just a point of view. So everybody's going to have a different point of view. And it's really how do you want to look at it. So it's not which one is true. So if you have like these stars in the sky, one group of people is going to say that's a horse, another one is going to say a buffalo. So the facts are the facts. Now, which way of looking at it serves me? If I think, leaders are born, okay, if I think I'm a born leader, then that serves me. But if I think I'm not a born leader, then that has no choice.
Yeah.
Also, if I think that leaders are born and I'm a leader, I might become very self-entitled, saying, "Oh, why are they not listening to me? I'm a leader," etc. So I think a more productive way of looking at it is like leaders are created, because if I feel like I want to become a leader, I know I can get there. And at the same time, even if I am kind of inspiring people, I don't say, well, I'm a born leader. I'm saying that's a process I've been through, and if I keep doing that, I'll stay on top. But if I don't, I'll eventually lose my credibility and trust and etc. So I think it's a more useful way of looking at it rather than which one is true or false. It's just like,
Sure.
that's the one I think I
Sure.
would prefer to look at it through that lens.
So we are basically saying that leaders can be created,
Yeah.
because that's the journey then which kind of improves you from your current self and
Yeah.
then makes you better and better, and that's the best way to kind of grow.
Yeah.
Um,
And a lot of people have become leaders much later in their life. I think Gandhi, when he was young, if you read his autobiography, it was nothing really special. He was
Yeah.
just going through the motions, becoming a lawyer, etc. And as then, when he gets thrown out of a train in South Africa, he says, well, that really hurt.
Yeah.
That's unfair. And that the
Yeah.
unfairness of him stings him to action. And, Colonel Sanders at KFC, I don't know the exact age, but he started KFC at like 64
Yeah.
or something
Yeah.
like that. Whereas for so many years, 6 decades, he hasn't really done anything. And that at a certain age, he does something. So I think you're kind of like, that trigger point could happen any point. Those experiences and that transformation of what is important can happen at any stage. So I wouldn't say that they're born, even though you might say, yeah, look at a baby, he was the first one to walk, and like in the fifth standard, he was the captain of the football team. So if you want to make a narrative, you could potentially, but there's also evidence of people who didn't do anything really remarkable until a certain age. So
yeah. So that's not what we say leaders are born. That's called parental pressure.
Right.
So I totally get what you're
Right.
saying. So one thing which I have observed is that the decision-making powers of great leaders is just fantabulous. So I think personally I have seen that they're able to move forward with a decision far more strongly, far more boldly versus someone who's a follower. What do you think gives them that conviction in having such strong decision-making power?
I think it's experience, the number of decisions that they made. So if you made and it's the velocity of decisions that people make. So if I make 100 decisions in a year, I've got the experience of 100 decisions, right? But if I'm like, oh, I don't want to make mistakes, so I'm very careful. So I only make 10 decisions in a year. Well, at the end of this year, one person is going to have the experience of 100, the other person is going to have 10. And because this person has made 100 decisions, their intuition has become sharper because they can see what has worked, what hasn't worked. And that gives them even more confidence than for the next 100 decisions. So they make 1,000 decisions because they've got that. So I think you've got to be willing to experiment. And again, I am not my result. So if I succeed or fail, I'll learn something in either case. If I think, no, I might fail, so I can't make that decision. So that separation of me from my results allows me to make decisions rather than, be stuck in confusion or indecision. And the more decisions I make, the sharper my intuition, which builds on my confidence because I see that I'm more likely to make decisions that work out for me. So
yeah. So Kanish, while I agree with this, I want to flip the question a bit. So there are two managers who have, let's say, graduated 2010 batch of
Right.
MBA, and now they're put into their respective jobs. If I go and see them in, let's say, 2024, one of them has become a leader, the other is still a follower or doing a job which is not in a position which is powerful, or the way we are defining leaders as. They would have had similar opportunities, they would have had similar situations to make decisions, etc.
Yeah.
The number also would be somewhere similar, right?
Yeah.
Big or small is a question we can ask. But is there a framework which you think can make your decision making better and hence your progress better?
I mean, there'll be many frameworks, but really the fastest way to become a leader and good at decision making is just make more of them,
Okay.
And so Bill Gates, he quit even before finishing his graduation.
Yeah.
So he's like the CEO of Microsoft at 20, let's say. Steve Jobs quit after his first term of MBA. Elon Musk dropped out of his PhD after 2 days. Mark Zuckerberg is a billionaire by 23. So they are like, I don't need more knowledge. I don't need a framework. I don't need to like learn these things. Gandhi didn't do a leadership program. They're making decisions, and at the age of 20, I'm deciding I'm not going to complete graduation. That's a big decision at that age, and they'll make decisions and they'll learn from that. Whereas a lot of us, come from the parental pressure. We will first do our engineering, then we will do our MBA, then we will work for a big company like HUL or Google, then maybe we'll work for a startup, for 4 years, then maybe we'll be co-founders, and then, at the age of like 35 or 40, maybe we'll think about starting our own company where somebody else is doing it at the age of 19, and that person is going to have $100 billion in their pocket, and we'll be, kind of going through the steps. So I think Bill Gates didn't say, I need to do an MBA before I start my business. So when you say, what is the best way of becoming a better decision making, there are lots of books on decision making, but just making decisions is the fastest way of becoming good at, like Dhirubhai Ambani and all. I'm sure they didn't do like big courses and stuff. They just, from gas attendant, they started making decisions and trusting themselves. And the more they do that, the faster they learn. So I think that's...
Also, I think being bold and saying, okay, this, and it comes from the point of introspection, which we spoke about earlier, that being bold, that, okay, these are the two paths. I don't know what is the path going to be until I try. But this seems likely. This seems logical to me, and I'm going to take the calculated risk with whatever variables I have and move forward with it with full conviction. I think possibly that kind of differentiates someone who is, a little shy from making that bold decision, and someone who has done his or her maths and making a calculated risk and taking a decision and moving forward possibly.
Sure.
Yeah.
You've got to... if you just make a decision, just fast decisions without any analysis, you're going to go bankrupt. You're going to like make terrible rash decisions, and at the same time you can be in a place where there's too much analysis. So to a certain extent you can say, okay, if I start a business, how much revenue could I get? If it doesn't work in so many years, what's my backup option? What is some way I can reduce it? So you do the analysis, and that will reduce the fear a little bit, but then there's always going to be some residual, and then you just got to have that boldness. So it's a bit of both, I think.
Yeah. So Kanishk, you have mentored so many leaders, or so many aspiring leaders, I would say. Tell me, who is your favorite?
For me, Shaheen Mistry, who's the founder and CEO of Teach for India. And she started Akanksha earlier. So she was just somebody who said, why are so many kids, they don't have access to good education compared to the private schools that I see, and instead of saying, oh, that's a terrible situation, she said, that's not okay, and I'm going to do something about it. And she just started teaching in those schools and, inspiring other people who are very educated, who could be earning, 30, 40, 50 lakhs, to be earning, 3-4 lakhs teaching in like government schools. And there's an entire movement of, 1,000 people every year, at least minimum, who could be, joining the top consulting banks, etc. And they come and they like earn literally 1/10 of what they would have earned because they believe in what she believes in. And I think it's the culture and the idealism and the willingness to do what they believe is right, even at genuine, financial cost to themselves, to get other people to do that willingly. That's really inspiring. And to get people from the top consulting firms and education institutes to contribute their time and effort because they see what she's doing, and then using all the analysis and frameworks and the management model. So it's a very professional organization. So that is someone, and I was lucky enough to work with her when she was starting TFI in 2009. The first batch of fellows, I worked with them, and I've been working with them since then. So she's one of my favorites. And I think another one was Govind Rajan, who's my boss at Hindustan Levers. And unfortunately no more just now, but very passionate and really believed in fighting for everything he believed in. And other people would see him as abrasive, but if he believed in something, he would just argue and say, no, we need to do this. Very passionate about his people, very caring, very honest, very direct, and just willing to shake things up to make things happen. And I remember there was a big poster on his wall which says that the reasonable man adapts to his surroundings, the unreasonable man adapts his surroundings to him. So all progress is made by the unreasonable man. And I think that he used that as an excuse to be unreasonable all the time. People were like, yeah, we are so unreasonable. You just point to the poster and you're like, oh, okay, fine. But I love that passion and that integrity and honesty and directness and the willingness to do whatever's required for what he believes in, even if it rubs people the wrong way, even if it's not politically correct. I love that about him. So those are the idealism and just the belief in what he, the passion. Those two people are really very.
And I think in both these examples, one very important thing which is coming out is passion is great, passion is very, very important, but so is action.
Right.
You can't just be passionate about something and not and just sit on it.
Sure.
Right? And both the examples you mentioned really went after to kind of make it see light of the day what they truly believed in, and take people along, right? Which is equally important. I mean, taking a financial cut, but still kind of delivering on the mission which you set out for is something impeccable. So you touched upon the fact that, once you are fresh out of college, early in your career, you have kind of self-doubt far more. It settles down, yes, we know that it settles down, but that initial self-doubt can get triggered from anywhere. Someone passing a comment, 3 quarters of not having growth in your sales targets, or the way you dress, the way you look, anything. How can one work on those insecurities which are there present early in one's career?
I think again it's knowing what's important to you. If you know that this is what's important and that's what's not important, then somebody says, oh, I don't think she should dress like that, that's a little bit inappropriate. It's just like, well, that's his opinion is not important to me with respect to my dress. Like I like the freedom, I like the comfort of these clothes, and I understand it's not traditional, etc. Some people, so this is important, that is not important. So then I can kind of hear things and dismiss it or pay attention, say, hey, if you wear that in a village, for example, in a rural stint, it might disturb the people. So I would recommend it's A, not safe, B, it kind of disturbs the local people. Say, okay, you know what? Yeah, maybe I can wear that and stay over here just out of consideration for others. So you can decide, is that important, is it not? And the more introspection you do, the faster you can process that and make a decision of how much attention you want to give that result. Or, if I don't achieve my result, okay, what is important? My parents are sick, so do I want to achieve the quarter target, or am I okay going away for the last 3 days of the quarter and going to my dad who's kind of needs his oxygen tank for the COVID? Now, if I'm not sure, oh my God, if I fail, then oh my dad, my elder brother can look after him. But if you've got that confusion, then you're going to be pulled in different directions by criticism or what's urgent or who's shouting or what's pressured. But if you're clear, no, family comes first, or no, there are other people who can take care, so I can do this. So you'll be more clear in making decisions if you have made your mind up of what is important to you.
Yeah. And I think clearly then it again goes back to, prioritizing, being very clear of your value system. Also of what you can bring to the table. There is family who can take care of a medical emergency at home. There are people who can take care of the quarter target at office. You be very, very clear of what value you can add where, and then just be there, and just be there wholeheartedly and 100%. Right? So I totally get what you're saying. One very interesting thing which I would want to discuss with you and with our audience is on teamwork. And many people I've seen, they would be great individual contributors. But when you put them in a team, they just are not able to perform well. And the other way is also true, by the way. They will shine when the team shines. But when you give them something, accountability to do something on their own, they struggle. Why is that?
I mean, the classic model is task versus people. So if you look at teams, there are some people who are like, I don't know, if I don't achieve the result, then I'm a failure. So, you better get my result done. And they'll be so harsh on their people who are not performing that the team feels like they're being exploited, or, like this person is using me for their benefit. They don't feel safe. They don't feel kind of respected. They don't feel cared for. So their motivation goes down. Attrition is high. They're kind of doing out of fear. So the creativity is gone. So one is I'm so scared about not being a success that I'll just use people as a tool. That's one mistake. And the other one is I'm so worried about people's opinions that they like me that I don't hold them accountable. Say, hey, I feel like you can do more than this. You're capable of more, and I want you to get back. So and complete this task, right? I believe in you. So they will be like, oh, I don't want them to be upset. Let me do it myself. It's okay. Don't worry about it. So they will either not push their team to get the best out of them, the team will become stagnant. They'll kind of go through the motions. They'll not be excited. They'll get bored and they'll exit for those reasons. Or I'll be like so task focused that people are exiting because there's too much pressure. So I think the balance is neither task nor people. It's both at the same time. So neither I say, poor you can't do this. Nor do I say, I don't want to hear your excuses. It's like, hey, the task is important and I believe that you can do it. Let's sit down and figure out, tell me how you're going to do it. And I make them do it, but I do it because I'm using the task to help them grow, right? So just whether it's football or archery or pottery or whatever, in getting better at doing the task, I need to kind of like master myself. And so the process of an external target helps me get personal mastery. And if, as a boss, I'm using the task as a mechanism to help my team grow, right? Then people feel very different. They're pushing me because he believes in me. He wants me to grow. He wants me to kind of develop, as opposed to he's pushing me because he wants his number done. So I think that's the two reasons. And I think the third one is just a desire for certainty and control. I'll just do it myself. It's just so difficult, so much time consuming. It's just, this is safe, this is easy, this is what I know. When I let go of it, it's too much uncertainty and ambiguity. I can't handle that. So I think those are three big reasons that people do that. And I think with respect to why do people function better as team leaders rather than individuals, I think there's some work that they don't enjoy doing, and they just find it easier to give it to other people. So that's a strength as well. So yeah, and you need to do both at times.
How important is having a common vision when you're running a team or part of a team?
I think it's very important because obviously otherwise you're pulling in different directions. But I think it's also important to use what inspires people rather than the same thing inspires everybody. So what I mean by that is, let's say one of my subordinates, he's only motivated by money. Did I get my bonus or did I not get my bonus? And I could be like very judgmental, saying, the guy doesn't care about the team. He doesn't care about contribution, his duty, contributing to the country, etc. He just cares about money. And I could judge him, but I have no idea what his background was. Like maybe he grew up very poor and he was like, you know what? I always feel sad because that friend has a toy that I don't, and I never want my son to feel that way. And so I will get that money and I will give him all the things that I didn't want. So I have no idea. All I see is he's just motivated by money, and what a mercenary, cynical guy he is. He may love his family, or he might have a parent who's like on, some medical bills that he really needs to pay for. So rather than saying that, oh, this is the vision and you should be all motivated, I might say this person is motivated by relationship, that person is motivated by money, this person is motivated by competition, this person is motivated. So yes, we're trying to achieve the same thing, but if I keep saying, oh, this is what we should be doing and all should be inspired by this, it may not work. I've got to get to know each of my team members as individuals, find out what is important to them, and then say, okay, this will give you this, and at the same time, it'll give me that. So I've got to have a common vision, but I've also got to make it individualized to people's own passions and desires and fears and so on.
So Kanishk, in today's day and age, has leadership evolved? What I mean by is that we are in a startup world. And here, I believe that leadership is really individualistic. Whereas if you talk about legacy companies, leadership is, really given, it has precedence. So you learn from your predecessors, right? You learn from the leaders who have lived a life in the company. And that kind of sets the culture of the company as well. How is leadership different between the two?
Well, Hindustan Levers, for example, the company that I worked for, as a management trainee, or let's say sales manager, my boss, the regional sales manager, had done my role, His boss, the regional manager, had also done my role. His boss, the VP of sales, had also done my role. His boss, director of sales, had also done my role. His boss, the chairman of HUL, had also done my role. So there's so many layers of people who've done what I have done, pretty much the same sort of role. So I kind of just absorb the culture that's built around me. It's been, HUL has been going for 100 years. But you take a company like, let's say, Flipkart, for example, right? And they will be whatever, tens of thousands of crores of revenue, and they would have achieved it in like 10 years. And so they don't have any precedent before this. They don't have anybody who can say, oh, this is how you speak to the distributor, this is how you set up. They're creating it all. They're managing a scale much bigger than their bosses handled, because their boss would have been handling it when it was 10, or like say when it was 1,000, 10,000 people, their boss would have been handling it when it was 1,000 people, their boss would have been handling it when it was like 100 people. So they don't have they're not facing the situation that I'm facing. It's unprecedented in terms of the complexity, the IT, the artificial intelligence, etc. So now we have to learn so much faster. They have a team at the age of 28 or like 15 people, right? Or like 150 people, 1,500 people. You could have CEOs who are 35. Earlier, it would be a CEO is like 60, like mid-level is like 45, the young junior manager like 28. Now the 28 are mid-level and the CEO could be 35. So the amount of maturity and the speed at which you need to develop your emotional intelligence, you can't kind of just absorb it. You have to be really accelerated in that. So I think that is a big difference. And so emotional intelligence, I think, is just incredibly important, because people are very smart analytically. They've come from the engineering schools, etc. But then they all think that they're right, and then they have clashes. So I think that is something something we need to learn how to accelerate, because the responsibilities they're getting are much bigger. The scale is bigger. So we need to accelerate the ability at which they can acquire emotional intelligence in startups compared to big companies. I think obviously the other one is that the people who are working for them are much more impatient. So as opposed to the old days where you're in a company for your career, 30 years, 40 years, you could work for the same company. Over here, people might work for 3 years, then move to another place for 3 years, then another place for 3 years. So when you're working with people, hierarchy, and they will follow orders because they want to stay in the company and listen to what I'm doing and prove me, can slowly work up. They don't like me, they'll go somewhere else. So I need to treat them almost as customers, right, rather than slaves. I need to meet their expectations. I need to listen to them. I need to kind of pay much more attention. It's much more flatter. And I think the ability to get work done by appealing to what's important to them rather than do it because I told you, that is something that we've got to change in these kind of startups. And so I think obviously startups, they own it, so they can do it their way, and they don't have to kind of like have this traditional model where they have to meet other people's expectations. If they're making money, they can do it with their own style. So I think that is something that creates much more individuality. But it's a very different culture in startup compared to very different.
In both startup as well as in legacy companies, I think one thing which is really on everyone's mind is that how do you differentiate? And why I ask this is, for example, you said that your boss also did the same job, the boss's boss also did the same job. How does one stand out? How does one differentiate in what he or she is bringing to the table or even taking away from the table?
Yeah. When you're younger, you just got to be hardworking will differentiate you from people who are not as hardworking. But at a certain level, everybody is the same level of smart. Everybody is the same level of hard. So at mid to senior level, then you've got to be a little bit more risk taking. You've got to be willing to drive things rather than just follow orders. And that is what I think will distinguish you. And again, you will drive things when you passionately believe in things. And you're willing to push back and your boss say, boss, we need to do this. You need to help me get the funding from this, as opposed to the boss saying, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? So at a certain level, it's going to change. I think when you're young, if you try to be too rebellious because there are too many layers, you're just going to be like the trouble child. Somebody else who's just following orders and doing it will kind of like get into less trouble. So at a younger age, work hard, follow the system, learn from the things around you. But at a certain age, you got to flip it and say, okay, how do I want this company to be? You got to change that a little bit. The biggest frustration that I get when I'm working with mid-level managers is they're like, why did I not get promoted? I got all my targets. It's not fair. And it's like, yeah, but just because you hit your targets doesn't mean you get promoted. You have to do a better job than other people. Right? So if everybody's achieved their target, then that's not what's going to be the distinguishing. Just because you achieve your target, you're feeling entitled. It's people who say, okay, I've achieved my target. Now, what do I believe in? What do I passionately believe in? So set your own targets what you believe is possible, go push on that rather than what's expected of you, because otherwise there's going to be this sense of betrayal at mid-level saying, but I achieved my targets, they didn't tell me that I was supposed to do. It's like, they're not
Yeah.
going to, that was your
Yeah.
job.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I want to really, really, go deep on. There's a level of denial when you come to, let's say, spending 8 to 10 years in a job. Why am I not getting into a position of power? And that's when, maximum attrition happens in organization, because the organization thinks you're not ready for that big leap, but you think you are ready. There is a constant denial, rather a constant mismatch between the expectation which the organization has, and whereas you think you're great. One is, you talked about acknowledging it. Are there ways in which that mid senior level manager aspirant can do something to really contribute in a big way, and make a change?
I think I don't think enough people use coaches. A coach, you could get a coach for like 10,000 rupees an hour. Good coach, 5,000, 10,000 rupees an hour. I'm talking about mid-level executives, and you spend like 5 hours getting coached. That's 50K. That's how much you would spend, like on a weekend trip to Goa or something like that. And that external way of looking at things will push you, will challenge you. You could get a 360 feedback. It'll say, what do I need to do? And if you kind of really, accelerate your career growth, potentially that 50K of investment leads to like 2 promotions early, which is another, 20, 30 lakhs, whatever it is. So I think it makes a lot of financial sense to push yourself proactively rather than waiting for the company for sending me something and just following orders and kind of like, I think, and I say that because today I had a coaching call with somebody as part of a corporate thing, and the person said, I want to go and get myself a personal coach because it just makes so much sense. And I was like, yeah, that does make sense. Like, why do more people not invest in themselves? If you had a financial asset where you invest, like $100 and you get $1,000 return, it would make absolutely perfect sense. But people don't see themselves or their own learning as a financial asset to invest in. And I think it makes a lot of sense for mid-level executives to go get a coach from LinkedIn or wherever.
Absolutely. And I think, as I was mentioning, I have been blessed to get coached from you at a point in time where I was having these doubts early in my career. And I think it's very, very important to create that awareness that, you can reach out to coaches. Some people are blessed that they get great mentors in their organization. And they kind of, as you were mentioning, great leaders think about, what really is the passion point, or, the motivation with which the team can move forward individually. But if you are still feeling that you need that extra coaching, extra mentorship, then do reach out. There is help to be taken. Kanishka, I think one aspect which also gets very important when you have to make that next growth leap is having a personal brand. Um, what is your take on that? Do you think personal branding is important? And if it is, how to go about it?
I'm a little bit of a fraud in this area because I talk a lot about it and tell people to do it, but I don't do it myself. And the reason I don't do it because Girish is very good at reaching out to people proactively and arranging sales conversations and stuff like that. So he's happy to do that work, and I do more of the research and development and the design of the program. So I lock myself in a room and I don't worry about networking. But I think the example that I give people who are like, I think the belief is I should not need to network. My work should speak for itself. And in fact, networking and showcasing my work is kind of like showing off or bragging off or cheating or kind of going around the system, basically using political connections. So they have these dirty kind of connotations with networking and kind of marketing yourself. And the analogy I give is of HUL saying, let's say our products are good, like Lifebuoy Lux. But if we say, well, the product is good, the quality is good, so we should not need to market, the product should speak for itself. Well, the sales will collapse if we take all our money off marketing, right? Because when the consumer goes into the shop, they'll be like, Lux, wo pink wala, gulabi wala Lux hai na, because they just saw it, it's top of mind. So when people are deciding which project to assign to whom, they're not going to go through every single performance appraisal of yours for the last 20 years and say, oh, this person spoke to this, here's his high school records. They don't have the time. They're going to be like, yeah, I sat with lunch and he seemed really passionate about AI. We should get him. That's how they're going to make a decision. Now, that person sat on lunch with him and you didn't. So you could say that's unfair, but they're going to make their decisions based on top of mind. So, you want to think of marketing as not marketing yourself, showcasing your work as letting people know what you can do for them.
Yeah.
Marketing is not bragging, it's not showing off, it's letting people know what you can do. So if I say, hey, listen, boss, I know that you're working on this project with AI. I worked on a project. I was just wondering if I could share, what we've learned on that. I thought you might find it interesting.
Yeah.
You may feel that, well, that's really intrusive. But the guy might say, yeah, sure, tell me. And it's like, yeah, you know what, we should use that guy because now I know that person exists with these capabilities.
Yeah.
And so when I go to a networking event for HR professionals and I see a bunch of HR guys, if I go there, I'm actually making their life easier because they came to this place to meet vendors, to see what trainings are there, to see what technologies out
Yeah.
there. So I'm not intruding on them. I'm actually making their life easier. And so this belief of my work should speak for itself is just, okay, should is the word that you want to be looking at. The question of does it speak for itself? If it does, you don't need to. If it doesn't, then you need to take it as part of your work is to let people know how you can help them. Because at HUL, part of our work is letting people know how we can help them. So you've got to
Yeah.
see that as an individual professional. That's part of your role, not just doing the work that's been assigned to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Many a times what happens is people get superficial when it comes to creating personal brand.
Yeah.
And fundamentally, I think that shows.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, someone who has experience can really, call it a bluff, right? And it's very important to have that genuineness of what you bring to the table, as you were rightly mentioning,
Yeah.
that, this is the value that I can add genuinely,
Yeah.
rather than just bluffing your way around.
Yeah, and it's not just the value that I can add, but what can I get? So I will know by speaking to these people, oh, these are the opportunities, these are the areas, these are the new,
Yeah.
products we're developing. Oh, that's interesting. I'd love to be part of that team. So people will know what I can give them, but I will also know what's out there that I find interesting. So both ways, it's a win-win, really.
Yeah, yeah. Many a times what happens is that why do people, and this is just a belief that I have, that why do people shy away from doing personal branding or networking is because somewhere they feel that, am I good enough?
Right.
What if the person judges me on the other side? As you mentioned that, you go talk to the person, look, I'm interested in AI, I have done this. But there's also a fear, what if the person who is doing this project or is in charge of this project judges me on the other side? Then I have no chance of, working in a team which I really want to work on. So that fear is somewhere, linked to insecurities of the past, failures of the past. What is your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think, an irrational one, because if I go and they think I'm not good enough for the project, so my chances go down. But if I don't approach them, I don't get the project either. So, I mean, you have even less chance. So let's say if I go, I have only a 10% chance of getting, 90% chance of getting rejected. But if I don't go, it's basically 100% rejection because I didn't even go. You could apply to Google. Yeah, you have like a 10% chance of getting it. But if you don't apply to Google, you have a 0% chance of getting it. So you're just assuming the fate. You're basically rejecting yourself rather than even giving them a chance to. Give people a chance to reject you.
So my mother says this in very simple terms. Na to hai hi na.
Right.
Ho sakta hai haan ho jaye.
Right. You already have the no in your pocket, right?
Yeah, na to hai. So ho sakta hai haan ho jaye. But if you don't try, then you will for sure not succeed.
Sure.
So you can decide for yourself. In this book, The Secret, it said that thoughts become things. And this is all over social media, manifestation, how you manifest, and so many videos. You talk about it a lot as well. What is your take on that manifestation, or just the power of thinking?
Yeah, I think I used to do a very interesting exercise where I would say, everybody close your eyes, right? And in the workshop, everybody would close. Oh, actually, before closing your eyes, look around and see all the things in this room that are blue. So you look around and say, that's blue, that's blue, that's blue. Count as many you can. This is a memory test. In a while, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. So let's see how many you can remember. So people will look around and close blue, 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 and they'll count, right? And I say, okay, close your eyes. And I say, okay, now tell me how many items can you remember that were yellow? And we're like, oh crap, he tricked us, So, but as they can hardly remember 2 or 3. They're like, okay, 1 or 2, I can remember that, maybe. And I say, open your eyes. And then they'll be like, 20 items which are yellow, right? But they weren't seeing it because they weren't looking for it. So when you are clear what you want, when an opportunity comes up that is linked to that, let's say you want to become a YouTube creator, right? If you're very clear on that, and somebody at Google says, oh, this guy came in, oh yeah, is he in the building? Oh, let me go and meet him. And I'll go, and that opportunity will emerge because I was clear what I wanted. If I hadn't got that clarity of, okay, that's what I want, that person could come in the building, the person could mention their name, but it just wouldn't strike me because I was looking for blue, and actually, that's yellow sort of thing. So I think one is you get clear, you will notice opportunities when they appear because you're more sensitized, it's top of mind. If you're afraid of something happen, it's more likely to happen. So let's say if I'm afraid of being rejected by an interviewer, that fear will create nervousness, right? And that nervousness is more likely to me being rejected. Yeah. So in a way, whatever I'm fearing, which actually creates something that will end up, creating the outcome that I fear. So they've also done a lot of experiments saying that, okay, we'll tell these teachers that these students are exceptional students. They show exceptional performance, and they just pick the students randomly. And what they found was that a year later, those students were actually doing better, right? Yeah. Even though they picked them randomly. Why? Because the teacher thought when this guy asks a question, it's an intelligent question. Even if it seems like a stupid question, maybe there's something I missed, so they'll treat it more respectfully. When the student is treated more respectfully, they start acquiring beliefs about themselves that I'm smart. So they study a little bit harder. They, behave in a way that reinforces their self-belief, and so they actually become smarter. Wow! And it's and that's called, I think, I can't remember the name of that, but that's a very measurable effect. And I think there was also one where they recorded people speaking on the phone to a lady. So they would say, "Hey, you don't know the lady. Here's a picture of the lady. She's very attractive, right? So, oh wow, right? So when I speak to her, I assume that when she's not talking, it's not a lack of confidence. It's mysterious." But if I get a plain picture, I'm like, oh, she's kind of like dull, right? But that's not the interesting thing. You say, okay, the guy's perception of the woman will match, what they've been told. But then people heard the conversation and they heard only the woman's side, and they said, tell us about the woman. And the people who were given the picture of the woman and they were told attractive, when other people heard the conversation without saying the woman, they said she is attractive. Yeah. Why? Because when I speak to you and I'm like paying attention to you, you also feel like, oh, wow. And you start speaking more confidently. So somebody who's just listening to your side of the conversation thinks of you the way that this person has told you come, even though the picture has got nothing to do with you. So in a strange way, these beliefs about what is possible, who I am, how people see me, they start becoming self-fulfilling prophecies. So it's very interesting, all the different mechanisms through which it can happen,
Have you seen manifestation magic happen to one of your students or someone you've coached?
Well, she's sitting in front of me. I remember in one of our workshops, she said, I want to become a creator, YouTube, etc., join Google or whatever. And then she went and did that. Wow. So I get a lot of people who come and say, this is something that in your class, I said I would become an entrepreneur, and they quit and they became an entrepreneur. I had 2 people quit in one day in my corporate workshop, and I was like, what am I going to say to the HR person? I was like, be clear on what do you want. And they evening of day 1, they were like, oh, I got clear that I don't want to work here anymore. How am I going to explain that? So so a lot of people, when they get clear, they take action. They do,
Absolutely. So Kanish, quite honestly, while having this conversation, I'm just reflecting back and, thinking that there have been so many great insights, so many great, tips that you have given and great stories which you have told. And I think it's for our viewers to really, absorb it and introspect, get that clarity and go take that next leap of growth in their journeys. I think that makes us come to our last section, which is our rapid fire section. While it is a rapid fire section, we would also like to know the why behind it. So I'll quickly get into that mode of rapid fire questions. Sure. Okay, so the must read book as per you.
It's a book about Zen philosophy, but Zen philosophy expressed through cartoons and funny stories and anecdotes, and it's just beautiful. It's the Book of the Die, right? The Book of the Die, that's the name of the book. So initially the first book he wrote was about a guy who's very doubting himself all the time. He was like a psychotherapist, I think, always worried, should I do this, should I do that? So one day he said, okay, let me just take a dice and I'm going to use that to decide what I should do. So like, okay, if it goes 1, I'm going to go buy bread. Next, I'm going to have Maggie for dinner. And 3, I'll go for a hotel. And he just made those decisions. And he was just like, oh, this just takes away the tension, right?
Yeah.
And so he started making them for bigger and bigger decisions. Like, should I stay in my marriage? Should I like have a divorce? Should I like have an affair, etc.? Bigger and bigger decisions. And it's just like, it's a funny story, but it just shows that how he was becoming more and more and more free, and the adventures he went on. And it became the sleeper hit across the US. Like everybody was like, wow, that's an interesting idea. And then the book that he wrote after that, The Book of the Die, is interesting because it says, you throw a dice, whatever number it ran, you open that chapter and read what's there on that page, and that will be what's relevant to your life. So that's an interesting way, because you're going in, it's kind of like the manifestation, intention, secret sort of thing. If I look at it, I will make that fit the problem I'm currently facing. And so the Chinese also have this very famous mystical book that they have. And again, it's like, if you have a problem, you kind of throw die, you have turtle shells, and you get a number, and you open to that page and you read that chapter, and that is what is relevant for your life. So I think I love the Book of the Die by Luke Reinhardt. It's a very funny and very wise book. So that's the one I would say.
Yeah. So Kanishk, my second question, a must-watch movie or a show?
Well, it's one that almost everybody would have seen it, but I'll say it anyway and say why. I think for me, Star Wars and Matrix, as you know, my public program is called Praxium, which is basically a Jedi training academy in Star Wars. And I named my son Kean, my eldest son Kean, after Star Wars Jedi Knight. And I think for me, Star Wars is really meaningful because it's about you need to go inwards and kind of get rid of all these kind of insecurities and doubts, and get to a place of peace and understanding, and that will allow you to do things that are like currently seeming impossible. So it's like self-mastery will lead to great powers. And I think Matrix is all about that as well, which is like, we are born into the world of confining, limiting beliefs about what we can do, what we can't. And when we overcome those beliefs, like, the Neo is able to do anything and fly, do karate, etc. So when you kind of like can see through the Matrix, which is basically, how I interpret it, is like the beliefs that hold you back. So I love those two movies, just because they kick-ass action also, but the meaning and significance that I've attributed to it is really work on yourself, go deep, develop yourself, overcome your limitations and beliefs, and you can make amazing things happen, which is kind of like what I do for my work. So those two.
What are your few non-negotiable mantras?
I'm the author of my life. I'll never blame anybody else for anything that happens in my life or the way things turn out. It's like, if there's anything that's not working, I got me here, I'll be the one who will get me out. That's what gives me authority. I think when you are the author of your life, that word author is linked to word authority. I'm the one writing it. So if I don't like a chapter in my life, I was the one who wrote it. Let me take authority and say this. So I think that's really important for me.
Yeah, very powerful.
Yeah.
And the last one, what is the wish that you have for our channel, Turn the Page?
Well, I wish that that you have a great time doing it, that you really enjoy it, and you have all the fun, and you learn a lot from it, and also that people who watch it, they also make decisions. Not just like, oh, that's interesting. They're like, hey, I'm gonna do that. So that they go and do the things that they've either always wanted to, or now that they realize they want to, and they don't just sit and be passive about it. They really take action, just the way that you did. I would love that for the people watching this show.
Yes, thank you so much, Kanishk. It's been an absolute honor. I really had a great time to be chatting on things which I learned from you and chatting them and bringing it for our audience. So I think many more conversations to follow. But as Kanishk said, that go out there, find your purpose, find your reasons, and make that decision. And as you do that, don't forget to turn the page.